Kalen commanded the primary console digits to sequence Vault 9. The countdown illuminated the staging floor where 72 elite recruits from the Coalition's heaviest military lineages completed their preparatory routines. Their kinetic shield generators hummed at a consistent pitch. Alex sat isolated on the steel loading bench, turning a small scratched steel pocket flask in her hand. Clink, clink. The sound echoed off the reinforced bulkheads. She possessed no subcutaneous plating, no external chitin, no bioreactive armor, just pale skin over soft tissue, wrapped in a simple blue wool garment. Kalen issued a final broadcast through the overhead comms. Recruit Alex. The Tier 8 glacial gauntlet simulates the unshielded atmosphere of a tectonic fracture. If your respiratory structure cannot tolerate a sudden barometric drop, withdraw now. Alex looked directly at the upper viewport, her large ocular structures entirely stable. I wore layers, she replied, pulling the blue wool tighter. Kalen initialized the primary lock cycle. The heavy blast valves sealed with a dense pneumatic thud. She seemed paralyzed at first. Then the system started to fail. That's when I realized I'd been measuring the wrong thing the entire time. The simulation bypassed standard introductory wind profiles. The chamber pressure gauges plunged from 1 bar to 0.5 bars within 0.18 seconds. The reaction was immediate. 18 Orthax shock troopers struck the deck plates, their multi-jointed legs locking instantly as their internal circulatory pressures expanded destructively against their rigid carapaces. They slapped their emergency tracking nodes to signal for medical recovery. Kalen checked the human's telemetry grid on the master administrator display. Her readouts presented an absolute, unchanging flatline. No protective metabolic surge. No frantic internal energy consumption. No sympathetic nervous system spike. She shifted her position behind a massive reinforced concrete structural support column and went perfectly still, tucking her cranium into her collar. Kalen noted this lack of signal with professional certainty. His long experience with soft-bodied organisms dictated that her nervous system had entered terminal shock-induced paralysis. He permitted the simulation to continue for an additional 120 seconds to satisfy the strategic betting pools running on the observation bridge. At the 4-minute marker, the automation core engaged the microparticle vapor atomizers. The air within Vault 9 transformed into a blinding white kinetic vortex of high-density ice crystals moving at 140 kilometers per hour. The internal temperature gauges slid rapidly down to 240 Kelvin. The remaining 54 Brulon and Klist combatants collapsed into a desperate defensive circle. The Brulons used their dense silicon hides to create a makeshift windbreak for the fragile Klist scouts, their personal kinetic matrices flickering a volatile dying orange color as their power units exhausted themselves against the cold. The acoustic signature inside the vault was an overwhelming roar of environmental violence mixed with panicked alien vocalizations. Behind the third concrete pillar, Alex remained entirely unmoving. Kalen's subdermal capillaries began to glow a faint silver hue along his jawline. Her cardiac rate had actually fallen to a steady 60 cycles per minute. Her core body temperature had dropped by exactly 1.1 degrees and stabilized like a locked vault. The automated medical diagnostic array flashed an amber warning alert. It could not process her specific metabolic state. She was not combating the environment. She was simply occupying it, her frame curled into a low surface area posture that bypassed every kinetic degradation model in the Zalthorian database. At precisely 7 minutes, the primary environmental engine encountered an unscripted systemic overload. The ice gale escalated past safe training thresholds to absolute maximum capacity. A heavy 3-meter section of structural permafrost broke away from the upper ceiling architecture and crashed directly into the primary ventilation intake valve above the recruit ring. The heavy steel shutter jammed solid. The oxygen levels inside the sealed vault began a steep exponential decline as carbon dioxide built within the closed system. The elite alien units broke completely. The Brulon formation fractured as they ran blindly toward the emergency retrieval ladders, their military discipline entirely erased by primitive asphyxiation terror. Kalen's console lit up with critical system failures cascading across every monitor. His subdermal capillaries flushed from faint silver to a brilliant, intense glow that spread from his jawline to his brow. This was not in the simulation parameters. This was a structural emergency. The supposedly paralyzed human stood up from behind her pillar. Her movements were terrifyingly deliberate, entirely unbothered by the 140-kilometer winds tearing at her blue woven wool garment. She reached into her pocket, uncreased the scratched steel flask, and extracted a single concentrated wintergreen drop, placing it into her oral cavity. The telemetry monitor registered a massive localized metabolic surge that hit Kalen's console like a physical blow. His subdermal capillaries flushed an intense brilliant silver. Alex inhaled the sub-zero, toxin-laden air through the vaporized volatile oils, a concentrated chemical blend that would have permanently melted a Clist Scout's air sacs, and treated it like a refreshing tonic. She marched directly through the center line of the whiteout storm. Her foot placement was absolute. She approached the base of the compromised ventilation housing, which was currently encased under 6 centimeters of solid reinforced structural ice. She set no equipment. She called for no assist. She raised one small, unarmored soft fist and struck the ice mass directly along its molecular crystallization axis. Crack! The ice structural integrity shattered instantly into fine powder. She wrapped her bare digits around the sub-zero manual release bar, a steel component cold enough to instantly fuse alien dermis upon contact, and exerted downward leverage with the casual mechanical efficiency of an apex persistence hunter. The heavy valve clears with a sharp metallic snap. Fresh oxygen filled the chamber. Toxic air dropped out. 18 seconds. That was the exact duration required for an unarmored biped to execute a critical physical override that typically demanded a mechanized maintenance unit. Kalen terminated the trial sequence immediately. The heavy blast doors pulled open, and a fleet of automated medical drones swept across the deck plates, recovering 72 hyperventilating, freezing elite combatants who were weeping openly into their primary manipulation limbs. Alex exited the vault last. She slowly pulled the blue wool hat from her cranium, her hair carrying faint lines of silver frost. She approached the main administrator platform, her scratched steel flask clinking softly in her fingers. "The air was a bit crisp," she remarked, her vocal tone entirely humble and devoid of standard combat bravado. "Reminds me of a bad winter in Michigan. Do you mind if I leave this flask on the desk?" The contents froze together during that last draft. She set the dented steel object onto Kalen's primary terminal interface, offered a brief civil nod, and walked toward the medical ward to assist her fallen classmates. Kalen stared down at the object. The steel casing was coated in a delicate geometric pattern of pristine frost. The automated logs on his terminal were already cycling through urgent notifications from the Supreme High Command. The strategic threat algorithm had automatically updated humanity's interstellar profile from Category 3, passive resident, to Category 9, extreme systemic variable. Kalen opened his administrative journal to record the official trial logs. His subdermal capillaries still vibrated, with a cold, lingering silver glow. He recorded no individual performance score. He recorded no physical marks. He simply deleted the old tactical guidelines and began drafting a brand new operational manual for the sector. The frost-coated flask rested on his console, collecting more delicate ice patterns with each breath of the recycled air. Strength that does not need to scream is the most terrifying thing in the galaxy.